I'm Rosie Anderson, as well as being one of the organisers for B-Sides, the Irresponsible Adults, as we're calling ourselves, and one of the founders for B-Sides Lancs. I'm also a recruiter, which is actually my full daytime job, although not all the time. I'm also one of them, I head up the mentoring for Caps Lock. And my wonderful, technically competitor, but I call her more like a friend, Natasha. Also, I will let her introduce herself, but she's also a really well-respected recruiter in the industry.
Hi, everyone. Really pleased to be here. So, yes, I'm also a recruiter. I run a business called Cyber Talent Partners. We specialise just in cybersecurity across all of the different disciplines and domains. I've been in recruitment for about 20 years. I know I don't look old enough. And I've also done some of the mentoring as well for Caps Lock, probably last year now. So yeah, really pleased to be here today and hopefully share some insightful tips, etc. And I'm sure Rosie was probably just about to say this anyway, but please do ping all your questions through. Rosie, if you let them know sort of how, but yeah, we'll be happy to answer as many as possible.
Yeah, if you can either put questions in the chat, or if you want to put your hand up, you can ask us a question at the end. So, okay. So Natasha and I have done this before, but when you're kind of figuring out either where you want to be in cyber or where you want to go next in cyber, you really need to look internally first and sort of figure out, well, what are you like? What are you good at? There's no point pushing yourself down a path just because somebody else has done and sort of trodden that path before. You need to follow your own journey, because the cyber industry definitely is a path of continual learning, and there's no point doing something that, for example, if risk, you really hate doing risk reports and audits, you hate writing pen test reports, don't go down those paths. Think about what are your strengths, make a list of those, and what do you really enjoy doing? Because, this industry is hard work. It's not easy. It's full on. So at least if you're really enjoying what you're doing day to day, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like a passion. I'll hand over to you, Natasha.
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. So, this is a process of some soul searching and some digging into, some of you may have just come out of, sort of academic studies. Others, maybe transitioning their career altogether. And so, what's really important is understanding, as Rosie said, what you're good at, what do you enjoy? And actually, if you've worked previously, whether or not you've worked in Tesco's or in retail or what have you during your studies, or whether or not you've had an entire career before thinking about transitioning across, let's think about, sort of within your role, within your responsibilities, what have they been, and what do you enjoy doing of those areas? Because what you'll find is as you start to pick through job descriptions, there'll be so many different or so many similarities in terms of what you've previously done or you're now doing versus, sort of the main requirements of the role.
The same sort of applies for the industry and the teams and the businesses that you're going to work in. If you know that you like working on your own, you don't want to be in an environment where you're going to be sort of micromanaged, or you like to be in an office, you don't want to work remotely, you need that people interaction. You've got to think about the sector, the organization that you're going to go to. There's plenty of examples of people who've kind of tried to go down a path and then found that actually 3 months into the role, this isn't the right environment for me. And that's also okay. If you find the right environment where you can grow and develop and you're going to work well, it's not necessarily just about the job, it's about the boss and the team that you're going to work with, because a great manager will make or break your career. If you know that you need a lot of support and you want training and development, and you do that better remotely, then being in an office, which is an open plan office, sort of 4 or 5 days a week, isn't going to be the right environment for you as well. So if you kind of have a bit of a wish list of what you want, both from a role as well as what you're good at, you can start to marry up together. And when you go through that interview process, you're assessing them as much as they're sort of assessing you.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Just the only thing to add on to that very, very briefly is actually, what's your why? Why do you want to come into cybersecurity? You're already here, which is amazing. And if you've been to any other conference events or meetups or, Discord channels or what have you, you're absolutely on the right path. But I do speak to a lot of individuals who want to come into industry who just can't answer that question. So, that's a little bit of your elevator pitch. Why does cybersecurity interest you? What difference do you want to make? Where do you want to add value? What interests you about it? Whether or not it's, sort of that continuous learning opportunity, whether or not that it's such a broad industry that, there's lots of opportunities to progress and pivot, etc. But understanding that will allow, when you go through to interviews, when you apply for jobs, allow those hiring managers, those recruiters to really connect with you and understand on a more personal level as to, what it is you bring or what you want to bring to the industry.
Yeah, fully agree with that. And it's okay for your why to be that this is a recession-proof industry where you can earn good money. But money shouldn't be the primary motivator when you're in an interview. You should have other reasons as well. One of the previous talks that was, lie on your CV. Don't make money the only reason you want a job when you're in an interview scenario. It's okay to be that for that if that is a motivator, but maybe just polish that answer that it's more of a recession-proof industry that you can sort of get into and develop, and that there will be jobs for life within cyber. We're always going to need more people.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're completely new to the industry and you're starting out, or even if you're sort of 2 years into your career and you don't necessarily know what's next, there's so many fantastic resources for you to find out at different roles within cyber. The Crest Day in the Life videos are a really, really good resource. I use them all the time. There's always new positions sort of coming out, but if you want to find out more about red teaming, if you want to find out more about security management, Crest have been great at putting together a whole list of videos, interviews with individuals that showcase what that role actually means. And I think particularly with this industry, when it's growing so rapidly, it is a good place to start. And another thing you can do once you've watched those videos is reach out to those people to sort of be building your network. Hey, I just watched the Crest Day in the Life video. I wanted to find out more about what you do. I thought it was great. Would you be happy to grab a coffee with me?
Yeah. I think once you've started to get a bit of a hands-on, understanding of what a day-to-day can look like and the different roles that exist, and actually you'll find a lot of that through those types of videos and what have you as well. And some of you may be further along in that path right now. So, things like Cybery, you Hack the Box, the Try Hack Me, etc. Actually, if you're already working towards, let's say you're working towards certifications, or, you've done some work in a home lab or started to build a little bit of a home lab, and actually you want to start testing those skills in a more slightly practical environment, in some scenario-based environments, then actually they're really, really good. Try Hack Me, Hack the Box. I think they offer free subscriptions initially, don't they? So not free subscriptions, but there's a couple of, sessions that you can do that don't cost anything to begin with.
Yeah, there's also a blue team path as well as a red team path on there, I think. The other, we can send these slides out as a resource afterwards, but there's loads and loads of great influencers within LinkedIn that share loads of advice. People like JJ Davey for SOC advice, people like Molly Chard. She's regularly hiring people as well into Capgemini. She shares loads of resources. And another great resource that's come out from the NCSC recently is the Cyber Careers Framework. Now, it's not perfect. There's never going to be a perfect framework for climbing the ladder within cyber, but it's a great starting point that showcases roles like GRC, roles like risk management, roles like consultancy, security engineering. And I think the point to get across here is there's so many resources available to you to start learning and developing and to get on in terms of building your technical skills. But I think whatever way you go, that Try Hack Me, that Hack the Box, the Team Online, they are great technical resources to build those skills. But even if you're going to go around the risk route, you're still going to have to build on your knowledge of those frameworks and resources and build that into your portfolio, whether that's project work or whether that's actually working in the role.
Yeah.
And that leads us nicely on to the cyber domains now. There are, this is constantly growing, and this is kind of the main decoding of cyber. There's so many different roles that class within cybersecurity and information security that you can go down. It's so much broader than just pen test and SOC. There's so many different places you can start. In terms of, and also so many places that you can pivot. You know, as recruiters, we speak to people all the time who are security architects. That's a role that you build up to. You can start anywhere on these sort of pathways and specialize and get into security architecture. The same with software developers who decide they want to get into security and want to sort of shift left to going into application security. If you're interested in risk management, that's a massive growth area in the industry as well. And it's a great way to get in if you understand risk and frameworks. I'll let you carry on, Natasha.
Yeah, and you know, you hit the spot there, is that a lot of people think that, you know, coming into the industry is all sort of penetration testing or SOC or what have you. But, you know, those roles are common. And they're very, very good entry points. You know, the SOC, for example, it can provide you with a really good basis to begin your career, in sort of learning level, but also, you know, sort of building those analysis skills, and actually building that sort of technical expertise as well. And I think so many people, you know, think that roles in the industry are purely technical. They're not. You know, it is important that, you know, to have a sort of basic, at least, understanding of sort of networking or computing concepts, because obviously they'll help in whatever role that you go into. You're going to need to have a base level of understanding. But then if you look at the map sort of to the right there, sort of that red area, which is sort of defines risk management, and then sort of alongside that, you'll see, you know, sort of penetration testing, and you'll see how the two interconnect. So I know that the map sort of looks really distinct, but they're all interconnected in one way or another. And so if you think about risk management, for example, and penetration testing, so risk management essentially identifies and assesses kind of potential security risks and vulnerabilities within an organization's system and processes. And then, of course, penetration testing, in terms of their role, is part of the risk management process. So, you know, a penetration tester will simulate real-world attacks to identify vulnerabilities and weaknesses. And then the results of penetration testing essentially help inform risk management strategies, because it gives them insights into areas that require mitigation and remediation as well. So as Rosie said, you know, you've got areas in policy and governance. You've got, you know, as we talked about, cybersecurity, risk management, etc. as well. You've got compliance, you've got business continuity. Another area which is, you know, sort of growing more and more popular and more common is cybersecurity education and awareness. Sales and marketing, and even, you know, if you've done a law degree before, you've got legal counsel and things like that. All of those different disciplines that sit kind of really within this heat map, but all interconnect in one way or another.
Yeah, I think an important thing to think about when you're considering roles as well, if it's your first role, where you start isn't necessarily where you're going to finish. Getting that first role, if you are new to the industry, is always the hardest role to get. Getting that second role afterwards, when you've got 12 months experience, is always a lot easier, because, you know, it is done. There are plenty of opportunities out there for entry level talent, but it's not always just cold applying for a role which is going to get you that role. It is the networking, it is the conferences, and it is those sorts of things, which I think will lead us nicely on to our next slide. Oh, no, sorry. Next one is the coolest careers in cyber, apparently, according to SANS. Threat hunter, red teamer, like there's so many different roles here that are apparently the coolest careers in cyber. Starting as a SOC, you can very easily get into incident response or cyber threat intelligence. Blue team is just as cool and sexy as the red team. I'm sure there'll be people, Glenn's in the corner there. You know, blue team role, red team role, purple team roles, all of these lovely colours. There's so much opportunity, and I think anybody who's coming into the industry, it must be quite exciting just to think, I want that role, I want to get there. Interesting how CISO is number 6. I think a lot of CISOs would say that isn't the coolest role in cyber. It's
the most disagree with that one.
Yeah, most stressful role in cyber. And there's plenty of people that don't want to be a CISO, to be a CISO, be in the C-suite. If you're an out-and-out techie and you love security architecture, you love security management, there's plenty of people that when they get to that role don't necessarily want to take that next step because they're getting away from being on the tools, or at least looking at technical strategy, because it's very much business and security strategy at that level. What's your favorite role to recruit for, Natasha? What do you think is the sexiest role in cyber?
See, I love recruiting for the SOC. Like from a technical perspective, always incident response, SOC, definitely, and then consultancy, because consultancy is always left field. So if anyone doesn't know sort of what a cybersecurity consultant does, essentially you'll work for an MSSP or a cyber integration company or a cyber services business, and actually you'll work across lots of different areas in cyber. So, you might be providing advice around cyber essentials, or you might be doing assessment with regards to, standards and frameworks like ISO 27001 1 minute. And then you might be doing some training and awareness with a business the next minute. It's a really great role to have, because the exposure that you get and sort of working across those different elements is so good as an introduction into cybersecurity, and sort of, really getting a sense of where you want to be. I think that's the other side, isn't it, Rosie? It's most people coming in don't know where they want to start, or actually where they want to end up. And I was having this conversation with a client the other day, and he said, people don't seem to know where they want to be in 1 to 3 years. And I said, because they're rabbits caught in the headlights. This is a really vast industry. But it also makes it super, super exciting, I think, because it's not like, if you think about quite regulated industries, or industries like in, marketing, legal, all of those, where you start kind of at one level and what that career ladder looks like. You're always working up to the next step on the ladder. This is so different. Yes, you can skill up in your current role, but equally, I've seen penetration testers then go into consultancy or GRC. And actually conversely, the other way around as well, people that have sat in kind of business continuity and risk management that have then suddenly taken a complete flip and gone down a technical route. As I say, the beauty is that you can pivot across those different areas, because that's based around your soft skill rather than just industry skill and knowledge. But yeah, they're my favourites. What are yours, Rosie?
I like the security architecture positions and the management roles, because they're just so vast. But security architecture I've always been fascinated with, because it touches so many parts of the business. And you think it's a really technical role, but it's not. You need those soft skills as well, like you say, or the impact skills to be able to speak to everybody. But yeah, it's so vast, and it's so quickly changing. I think there's plenty of sexy roles in cyber, but you can see here, there is blue teamer, SOC, there is pen tester, but there's so many more roles as well that's part of that. And I think that's just an important message to get across. It is such a vast industry, and where you start isn't where you're going to end up. You can pivot. It's more like a web. Like if we go back to that image, it is more like a web than actually a linear career path.
Yeah, definitely.
So you don't have to be technical for a job in cyber, but you do have to have a basic level of understanding. So like some of the earlier talks talked about, you need to know the basics of IT systems and networks. Even if you're looking to get into a risk role, you need those network fundamentals. You need to understand how network traffic passes. You need to understand security and communication principles. And it's really important that even if you're going in for a GRC role, that they're going to ask you some technical questions to understand where your base level of understanding is. Governance, risk and compliance are still very much technical roles. You need to understand all of how those, how network passes, how traffic passes across the network, to be able to convey and understand those risk reports and to put together those risk reports.
Yeah.
The home lab projects are really important. Even if graduates, we always tell them this: you need a portfolio if you want to get into pen testing or into SOC of what you've done, so that if you're asked, even if you haven't got that commercial experience, like Joshua said, it wasn't quite lie on your CV, but it was embellish those projects. those projects that are your passion projects, you'll be able to talk about really effectively. You can probably tell with Natasha and I, we're really passionate about recruitment. It comes across naturally that we're passionate. So if you have networking projects that you do, maybe you used a Raspberry Pi to build a network, maybe you've got a guest Wi-Fi or home Wi-Fi at home. There's loads of YouTube tutorials to set up projects that you can then talk about in interviews, how you did it, why you did it that way, what you learned from those projects. So get learning. The best way to get learning is hands-on. Just don't go hacking into networks of, your neighbors, even if they are that problem neighbor. You've got Try Hack Me, you've got Hack the Box, you've got all these different useful resources. And there's also SOC level 2 courses that you can do, an entry level cyber that you can do for free on Try Hack Me to get started out. There's so much resources now as well.
Yeah, I think to Rosie's point, in terms of anything you've done previously, no matter how basic that you think that may be, actually displaying that level of knowledge on your CV kind of personalizes it as well in terms of who you are and the things that you're interested in, and actually that you're passionate for getting your hands on and giving something a go. And even if it's kind of electrical stuff and you're trying to pull it apart and put it back together and things like that, they all count towards, because it's actually, it's sort of that analytical mindset. It's how you sort of pull things apart and put them back together is very, very kind of similar skills that you'd be using in, say, penetration testing or, in other areas of the industry. Even if you've, installed a VPN on your, on your laptop, on your systems, or you've, set up, as Rosie said, kind of Wi-Fi for family or anything around those areas. It just demonstrates an aptitude and a passion for what you're doing, rather than I just want to come into cyber with no reason. Actually, it helps from a recruitment perspective in terms of, the things that stand out for Rosie and I when we're looking at CVs. All of those things really stand out above somebody who hasn't mentioned, or displayed, sort of the learning that they've been doing. And that could be reading books as well. What books have you been reading? You've joined this B-Sides event today. Talk about it. Talk about the different events that you've, and how you've immersed yourself into the community and things like that.
The other thing, and I'll mention now for volunteering, B-Sides are community events. If you can get involved in B-Sides Newcastle, there's Cambridge coming up, there's Basingstoke coming up, if there's a one in your area, you and volunteer and help out on the day, you're suddenly in probably a Discord server with a load of potential hiring managers. You're also volunteering and getting to know people within your local community. And that's how you build your networks. Like Jer said before, it is networking and meeting people and being part of that's going to help. You speak to somebody about your passion project, that this is what you want to do, and get advice from, professionals in the industry. Next time they're hiring, or they hear one of their friends is hiring for a junior, if you'll have made an impact because you've had that conversation with them. The thing with you Try Hack Me courses and things like that you do, and your home projects, as well as doing the tech, as you can see, I'm not very technical, you need to write up about it. So you need to do a write-up about the tech, how you actually completed that challenge, whether it's a CCF, with screenshots, what you did, how you found the flags, those sorts of things, from a technical perspective, as though you were writing that to a tech, a vulnerability manager within a business. But then at the same time, you need to write an executive level summary, which would be part of your pen test report that would go to the board that aren't that interested in the technical. They just want to know, what's the risk score? What's the risk? How do we remediate against this risk? And if you can do those write-ups about the project, it shows you're learning. Yes, you can break in, but do you understand how you broke in? And do you understand how to convey that, what you did, to a non-technical audience? And would you also know then how to remediate what you've done as well? Because it's showing in a portfolio type project, it's showing that you understand what you've done, how you've done it, and how to convey that back to a technical and non-technical audience. And whether you put those things either on a LinkedIn profile, whether you have a blog, whether you have a Reddit thread or GitHub thread, or that sort of talks about how you've done it, you're building a portfolio then of all these passion projects. So, okay, your CV might not show any commercial experience, but actually you've got it on there as well. So we can send these slides with links out afterwards as well. Natasha and I have kind of put an ebook together that we can share with anybody. I'm conscious we're getting close to time. Certifications, where you can do certs. Some people like certs, some people don't like certs. It's a way of showcasing your knowledge, but those personal projects are also important. That hands-on experience is important, and a great employer would sponsor certs for you. You can teach the technical, you can't teach passion, and you can't teach those soft skills experience as well. Anything more you want to say on certs?
Just don't put yourself under too much pressure to do them. Because I think, if there is a specific path that you want to go down and you think by doing a certification, it will help you learn more about the process around what it is you want to do, or just get a deeper level of understanding, then by all means, go down the certification route. But don't use them as a badge of honor, is all I'm trying to say. It just demonstrate what you've learned and how that has kind of really added to your knowledge base and your experience in one way or another. Just, if you do display your certifications, just be able to articulate what it is you've learned and how that strengthens your knowledge. Not every business looks for them. As Rosie said, your passion projects, any sort of personal mini projects and things like that, I personally would say are just as important as certifications.
And then networking, building your network, probably the most important aspect. When I'm talking to the caps lockers, I will say to them, you probably won't get your first job by cold applying. If you just want to cold apply for jobs, you might need to apply for 150 as an entry-level job, as an idea of numbers. If you go out and build your network, if you're active on social media, and I get everybody has different views with social media, but if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Twitter, if there's meetup groups in your local area, get out and meet the community. You're not necessarily, you don't necessarily need to engage straight away, but if you're part of a network on LinkedIn, you can just connect with people. If you don't have to send them a message straight away. Anyone that you meet, any talks that you see, if you're at B-Sides tomorrow, even if the talks that you don't see, they typically go out on YouTube afterwards. So once you've watched somebody's talk, if you can send them a message that says, hey, I just watched a talk at B-Sides. And the thing is, there's loads of B-Sides. There's loads of years of B-Sides content that's on YouTube. I'd love to chat with you because I really want to do the job that you're doing. I've found this point really interesting. You're starting a conversation that's not, hey, got any jobs in cyber? What do you want to do in cyber? It's a more informed conversation, and people are more likely to engage back with you. We love networking, don't we, Natasha?
Yeah, in any way, which shape or form. I think to add to that as well, and a lot of people coming into the industry perhaps don't realise is recruiters are not likely to be your best bet in terms of finding your first role in cybersecurity. And the reason for that is, as much as obviously we hire across the industry and we do get the odd role here and there that is at a junior level because a business wants us to manage the process. Most businesses will actually rather invest in you than pay a recruiter to find somebody for that role. So they'd rather make that investment into you and your training and your development, certifications, etc. So, as Rosie said, your best bet is to connect with people in the roles, potential hiring managers. If you're looking down, hypothetically speaking, if you're looking down the SOC route, how many SOC managers can you connect with in a week? And as Rosie said, again, you don't need to necessarily talk to them immediately, but the benefit that you get is actually, if they're hiring, they're very likely to put out a LinkedIn post and you'll immediately see it. Or if you've already been building a relationship and have been having strong conversations with them, you'll be top of mind, because they'll always go into network and community before they'll go out and, put an advert out, for example.
The other thing is, it's not just SOC managers, it's SOC analysts as well, people who are doing the job that you want to do. They might get asked for recommendations. Just conscious of time as well, just very quickly. Ladies Hacking Society, if you are a lady, even if you're not a lady, you're very welcome, but it's a ladies first sort of space. The Ladies Hack Society, they've got meetups all over the UK, and they're a great network, and they're not just technical. They do have sort of risk talks and management talks as well, and loads of businesses will go there first to say, hey, we're going to be hiring. And the great thing with that is, same as with like the tech vets community, they already have great women within the industry. It's a safe space for women to work. So it's a really good networking group as well. Thank you very much for having us.